stars through the perilous fight. Oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in there, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, sailors, stand stars, bring to bear iron wave. Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave and bright.
All right, everybody. Hello, and thank you for joining me. This is Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier. And as you may have just heard, that was Hong Kong. It's a little bit older. It was actually from August 4th when we first started hearing about the protesters in Hong Kong. And people were just starting to pay attention to that story. And they, gee, what's going on out there? What's happening in Hong Kong? And should we be paying attention to it? Hong Kong protesters wanted democracy. And they were looking to the example around the world where they could see that democracy, where they could see freedom in something that they could attain. And they looked at the United States, America. They chose our nation, and they are so captivated by it that they wanted to be more like America. The protesters spoke up. They spoke out against communism, against socialism, and they said, we want to be more like America. And we've had nothing since that time except protests and, yes, some violence from the government of China trying to subdue and to force into submission the people of Hong Kong, to force them to accept socialism and communism. These are facts. They are indisputable. You cannot argue this. This is what's been happening, and the world has been watching that. And I spoke about that a little bit back in, it was August 16th, as a matter of fact, that I had first mentioned it. And I said a couple of things at that time.
I want to talk about why America is a beautiful, great nation. And I'm not saying it because I believe, and I do, that America is a beautiful, great, wondrous, free nation. And that's an important thing to say. But I don't want to say that from the point of view of an American. I want to say this from the point of view of the other people who are saying it. The Chinese nationals, the illegal aliens that come into our nation, tens of millions of illegal aliens.
And I'm going to stop right there. And you can check this out, and I'll have the link in the description of the video. But it's very important to recognize that in August of 2019, we were seeing around the world, Hong Kong trying to be more democratic, more like America. We see tens of millions of illegal aliens in America trying to be more like Americans, to have freedom, to have choice, to have capitalism. These are the things that we see in the world at this time. And you have to wonder about that. You know, is it worth it? Does it make a difference? Are they deluded? Do they know what they're looking for? Because as we have all been told, and we have heard over and over again, your vote doesn't matter. Your vote doesn't count. In fact, if you really pay attention to it, you will remember that it was Vice, Vice.com, a very liberal, very left-leaning organization, where they said, they even got an expert in 2016 to tell people, to tell voters, that your vote won't matter, which I think they're kind of sad about today, now that President Trump is in office and Hillary Clinton has lost. But they said, your vote, it doesn't matter. In fact, going with that article, and I'm going to quote this, and again, descriptions for the, the links to all of this will be in the description of the video so you can hear this. But I want you to think about this very carefully, okay? Because in the article, which was written by Harry Cheadle on August 29th of 2016, he mentions in there, he goes, I called upon Jason Brennan, a philosopher and professor at Georgetown University, an intellectual, something very important for many socialists, who wrote the book called The Ethics of Voting. He told me why voters are like people who think gasoline can put out fires and when's the right time to vote for Mussolini. Now I feel a lot better. He feels a lot better by insulting voters, by saying that voters would use gasoline to put out a fire, that voters would vote for Mussolini. This is what the liberal media wants you to believe. Your vote doesn't matter. You don't matter. You're just part of whatever group whatever category they decide is important today. You're a black person? Well, you're just part of a black conglomerate. You are not an individual. Your vote doesn't matter individually. That's what they like to say over and over again. But yet, that's not what the people of Hong Kong believe. See, if the people of Hong Kong listened to what we hear from Vice and from various liberal organizations, teachers, then they wouldn't be voting. In fact, we wouldn't have the situation we have right now, which is that
out to vote in Hong Kong's district elections Sunday, voters formed long lines around polling places in each of the city's 18 districts. The election is seen as a proxy referendum on months of anti-government protests, along with other issues. Officials are counting ballots now.
Well, the votes got counted. And what the result was, we found out, is that Hong Kong delivered a landslide victory for pro-democracy, to be more democratic like America. In fact, 18 of the election districts that were up for a vote won on the pro-democracy ticket. In fact, and according to the article by theguardian.com, The Guardian on this evening reported, and today being November 24th, this evening, almost at midnight, they reported that when polls closed at 10:30 p.m. on Sunday, the 24th of November, nearly 3 million people had voted, representing more than 71% of the electorate and nearly half of Hong Kong's population. Many had never voted before. Think about that for a second. 71% of the people voted. Nearly half of the population. Many for the first time ever. They voted, they made their voices count, and democracy won in a landslide. And again, I want you to compare that to 2016, where Vice, pro-democracy, pro-socialism, the far-left liberal magazine, says your vote won't matter. Imagine if that was the message that Hong Kong took instead of freedom, instead of America. Do you think democracy would have won? Or do you think the communist government of China would still be overrun in that city and would be suppressing freedom, the freedom of speech, the freedom of thought, the freedom of life? Now, will that change Hong Kong? I don't know. I can't answer that question because it's way too early to make that kind of choice or that decision. But what we do know is that in America we have an election coming up. I think we've all heard about the 2020 election and the 2020 Democratic presidential nomination. And we know that, according to Real Clear Politics, Joe Biden leads right now in first place. He's got about 29.8% of the vote, of the Democratic vote. And what's his name? Oh, Sanders. Senator, God, I forgot his first name. Senator Bernie Sanders, who happens to be in second place. He has 19.3% of the vote. Very closely followed by Elizabeth Warren, another senator, with 18.5%. Followed by Pete Buttigieg at 7.8%. Kamala Harris by 4%. Andrew Yang, 2.8%. And everyone else after that really doesn't matter. Quite honestly, they just don't count. But let's really focus on this. Let's look at this for a second. And I can tell you that back in October of 2018, we already said on this show that we believe it's going to be Elizabeth Warren running for the presidency under the Democratic ticket, with most likely Kamala Harris running as her VP on an all-woman, all-gender and identity politics program for the socialist ticket of the presidency. That's what we believe, that's what we've said, and I stand by that. But you have to ask yourself, what's going on in America? Socialists are telling you your vote doesn't matter, except when they want your vote, just for the show, apparently. They're out there saying they want to have socialism. Bernie Sanders is a self-avowed communist socialist. Democratic socialists like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez exist, trying to push America further and further left. The Democratic candidates have gone so far left that President Barack Obama has told the party to pull back and to get more centrist. And you have to ask yourself, what is really going on here? What are these people thinking? Because I don't understand it. And you have to, and I look at this, and I was checking out various different sites. And you can see, according to different sites here, they're all liberal, they're all progressive. Looking at, going to businessinsider.com, which is on the leftmost of your screen right now. Every single one of the candidates on the ideological spectrum for the Democrats, they're all liberals. Some are very liberal, some are not so liberal, the ones that are still in the race, but they're all liberals. If you're looking at the socialism ranking that we have up on the screen, this comes from Hawk Herald, a student's guide to the 2020 presidential candidates, and we have Bernie Sanders being the most liberal, not more liberal, the most liberal as a socialist communist. And then from there, we work our way down. And quite honestly, if we were looking at this realistically, the American people tend to be somewhere between John Kasich and Chris Christie, two Republicans. And that's where the center of America is. That's where we are. And look at how far away every other single Democrat is, including Joe Biden, who's considered the moderate of all of the Democrats. And he's still left of center. But you could look at it from another way, and there's many different lists out there. I was trying to find as many as I could. Nothing really recent, though. But I did find, on YouTube, on Yahoo, I believe it was, the most socialist or capitalist happened to be, on a scale of 1 to 10, well, Yahoo Finance did a scale of 1 to 12, which you should wonder about. On a scale of 1 to 12, and you have to ask yourself, why a scale of 1 to 12? Who rates anything on a scale of 1 to 12? Why wouldn't you put it on a scale of 1 to 10? Well, because on a scale of 1 to 10, in a graphic, it looks a lot better. On that scale of 1 to 10, what we find out is the leader, Bernie Sanders, he's at 3.3%. That is a socialist, as he admits himself. Biden, at the very best, the least liberal of all the candidates, is 7.5. But have you heard some of the things he's offered and suggested? And he's been racing. This was a chart done by Yahoo Finance in March of 2019. Biden has been racing towards the left and become even more socialist in his rhetoric. And everyone else on there rates a solid rating of socialist on a scale of 1 to 10, which looks a lot worse when you're looking at it rather than a scale of 1 to 12. Even Mr. Yang, Andrew Yang, who's a businessman, who should score a 6.7, well, when you think about it, Andrew Yang, he wants to give away free money. He wants to pay people. He wants to have the socialist ideal that everyone is getting money from the government. Very socialist. And that's a 6.7? I don't think so. Not according to what he's talking about. But I have to say this. The thing that really gets me is as the nation is running further and further towards socialism, on the other end, we're seeing Hong Kong not. And you know what's sad? According to Spectrum Local News, less than a quarter of the New Yorkers voted in November of 2019. Only 22% of the people available in this state, which has 19.5 million people, only 22% or 2.6 million people came out to vote. Only 1.9% or a quarter of a million people came out to do early voting, which was supposed to make more people vote than ever before, and even fewer ever showed up. And you know what? In Hong Kong, 71% of people came out to vote for democracy. I have to say, this is really disappointing. But this is why we get candidates who I want to point out, like Aviva Freeman. In my local Southern Tier community, Aviva Freeman, who on October 16th of 2019 admitted that she is a member of PLOT. She is a member of the Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow. That's not me making it up. That's her saying that on her Facebook page, that she is a member of a socialist organization that we have seen since that time has not only had the Columbus Day Parade, arrests for disrupting the peace and intimidation, but has gone on with protests at Binghamton University, that has gone on to have Dr. Art Laffer kicked out of the university because of them silencing free speech, the very thing that in Hong Kong they're fighting for. That they have gone on to cause protests. There's been 3 more protests since Aviva Freeman made her comment saying she is a member of PLOT, Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, that she does advocate for the silencing of free speech. You know, something's going wrong with this country. Something isn't making sense. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense when I see that Hong Kong is celebrating. They're overjoyed. They want to be more like Americans. And Americans want to be more like socialists. What's going on, folks? The Hong Kong's speaking out loud and clear. 2020 candidates, they're speaking out loud and clear. We have a choice that's facing us in 2020. We can be more like PLOT, Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, like Citizen Action, Indivisible New York, the socialists, democratic socialists like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We can become the socialist nation that Venezuela and China are, or we could be more like the people of Hong Kong, and we can vote for freedom, for the American way. I don't know. Which one do you think will be better for your future? That's a choice you get to make because you're free, at least for now. Well, this is the end of my night. I'm going to sleep. I have to get ready for work. I hope you found this interesting, at least a little bit, and I look forward to hearing your comments. Please reach out to us. Our phone number is 607-242-1582. You can reach us on Twitter at MVConsult. You can reach us at info@VosConsult for our email. And of course, you can always send us a text at our phone line. Again, 607-242-1582. We're looking forward to speaking to you all. We thank you for your comments and your thoughts, and we look forward to speaking to you again really, really soon. Bye-bye.